The American people are effectively done with the Electoral College. They want a popular vote, and that probably isn't a surprise to you. What might be surprising though is how quickly they're moving to be ever more opposed to the Electoral College continuing. So here is the overall numbers from a relatively recent poll from Pew Research. 63% to 35% say change it to whoever receives the most votes wins, which I think is an interesting novel concept for what is supposed to be a democracy. Anyway, 35% are still in favor of keeping the Electoral College. When you break it down, interestingly, if not necessarily surprisingly, the younger you are, the more likely you want it to be based on actual votes. The older you are, the more likely you want it to be the Electoral College. Although even 65 plus do want the Electoral College to be abolished. And there's of course a pretty strong partisan reaction. Liberal Democrats overwhelmingly want to be based on the popular vote. Conservative Republicans, 66% want the Electoral College to continue. Although notably, 1 out of 3 self-described conservative Republicans also want it to just be based on the vote. And let's keep it real about why some of them are saying they still want the Electoral College. It ain't philosophy, it ain't ideology, it ain't core to their values. They believe that that's the only way that they can win. And they're kind of onto something. That is seemingly over the last couple of decades, basically the only way they can win national elections. And so this has nothing to do with consistency or values or principles or anything like that. This is political opportunism. They would go for democracy if democracy would go for them. Democracy has turned their back on them. And so they've turned their back on democracy, JR. That's the way I read it.
Similarly with police, this is a running theme. They run off of certain things that is their principles and the basis for their belief systems until it is no longer beneficial to their political expediency, their power, their positions to get that power. Once that ends, oh my God, police, democracy. We've seen it openly how they talk about they want to change those things. I know it was one particular lady that talked about if we're gonna have a dictatorship, I want it to be Donald Trump, and says it with all of the fever and anger that she can muster inside of her body. And completely unapologetic, is not gonna go home and say, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that. It's no, I totally believe in that. So now again, this is one of those situations where even when the folks voting, at least in the country, the ones who had the majority of the power to vote, and it was exclusionary of so many other folks, they'd have been fine with a direct and open popular vote then, because they were only allowed to have those folks vote. It was still exclusionary, but they could have written it off as it was us. But as those things shift, as people are given more and more rights, the type of folks that like to oppress people see the expansion of rights as their rights being taken away, as if there's just this limited amount of rights in the country. And then once everyone gets it, theirs get taken away. That comes from someone who likes to wield that power to have only certain rights to keep others from having it. They think, oh my God, I have to be treated like the folks that I've always treated a certain way. This is an absolute no-no. That's why, of course, 2/3 of these conservatives that think this way don't want that. But that 1/3, they're the crazy ones that actually think their policies are things that people like. And I don't know where they're from. I think there's all the pundits on Fox News, but they might know better too.
Yeah, I think your read of the Republicans is right on. But interestingly, I teased at the beginning of this. This isn't just about this poll. This is about how fast it's moved, and it's even moved for some of those Republicans, which is pretty interesting. Back in January 2021, 55% said they support getting rid of the Electoral College. So it's moved from 55% to 63%, 8 points. And this ain't like some small little policy that you're moving a lot of people on. 8% of the country moved on one of the most core structural components of our government in 1.5 years, basically. Perhaps because they realize how at risk our democracy is. And by the way, while a majority of Republicans continue to say that they should keep the Electoral College, that has moved. So 42% say that they support moving to a popular vote. It was 37% in 2021. It was 27% in the immediate wake of the 2016 election. And so 27 to 42%, it's still not a majority, but that is pretty fast movement for something pretty big. That also, by the way, is not a super new issue. It's not like nobody was thinking about the Electoral College before 2016. There are many Republicans who probably thought they had a fairly hardened, concrete view on this. We went through 2000, we went through the concerns about 2004, that presidential election, and yet still many of them are moving. And so I think this is something that we need to continue to push on. Any change like this is gonna be super difficult, but we can engage in these fights while we also pay attention to more topical stuff day by day. I think we can manage to do both of those things.
It has to be something that they're gonna push and make sure they say regularly and with a clarity, because of course it's gonna get attacked as looking to usurp power again because of projection.
Yeah, 100%.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.